Sometimes the answer is no, because sometimes things are happening geopolitically that actually you don't want to be at the front of the queue. That's not where you want to be. Sometimes there are things you need to let play out and then be there to support the industry thereafter. So we have people internally who support on this, and that is a very good thing to have in a business.
Hey, I'm Corrina.
And I'm Taylor.
And this is Direct, a podcast we created to showcase the creativity and hard work of go-to-market teams everywhere.
We're here to share the stories and experiences of the hardworking, passionate individuals who make up go-to-market teams, the ones who truly make the magic happen.
Taylor and I have been fortunate enough to work side by side on some incredible projects together, and now we want to put a spotlight on the unsung heroes behind some of the best go-to-market campaigns out there.
In each episode, you'll hear from individual contributors who have gone above and beyond to make a difference. They'll share their challenges, victories, and the lessons they've learned along the way, all to help you unlock the next step in your career. Get ready to be inspired, learn something new, maybe even share a laugh or two.
Welcome to Direct.
Welcome back to another episode of Direct with Corrina and Taylor. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Corrina.
And today we're joined by Dany Rastelli. He is the Global Head of Marketing and Communications at Polestar Global, a software that enables businesses to make data-driven decisions around maritime compliance. He's passionate about mentoring other marketers and startups. Dany, before we jump in, what is your number one piece of advice you'd give someone seeking a mentor?
That is a very good question. The one piece of advice is just go for it. Find someone who you trust, who you believe can guide you in what you want to achieve, and just speak to them, reach out to them. Too many times I found myself in front of people wanting to know more, needing to know more, and just shying away from it. Some of it was personality traits, some of it was insecurity in a junior position. But if you see someone who you trust and you believe can help you, just speak to them. 99% of the time they will help you. Not always in the way that you feel is valuable at the time, but down the road, trust me, you'll believe in what they say.
Yes, and I echo that. Don't be afraid to ask and reach out. Dany, we are so glad to have you on the show. We're going to get into your campaign, everything that's going on. You've got a very busy role. But before we get started, we ask our guests one question. And that question is, if you had a magic wand, it could change anything about your role or maybe the profession itself, what would you use that wand for?
So I would use the magic wand to go back in time and tell junior Dany to believe in himself a little bit more than perhaps junior Dany actually did. I would probably go back and say to myself, you know your stuff, you'll be okay. One of the things that I always tell my mentees is don't spend time worrying about what you don't know. Spend that time thinking about what you could know if you just ask the question. And I didn't really, and it kind of ties into what you were saying before about what I would tell my mentees. It's not an easy industry to come into, marketing. Marketing is it can be stagnant one day and incredibly fast the next day. And it's really how you drive it yourself that really showcases what you can do. So yeah, I would definitely say if I could go back, if I could use a magic wand, I would go back and I would say, just do it. Let's just do it and enjoy it.
Love it. Love it. Really good advice. So Dany, set the stage for our listeners. You have quite an interesting industry that I think is unique. We haven't had any guests on yet to speak to this industry, but you're also going through some incredible transformation and change, acquiring potentially some new companies, adding some new product lines. Can you set the stage for us about what you've been tasked with as the marketing leader, as far as all these different challenges you're facing, the different transformation, and how you're really setting the stage for you and your team to go to market with these new changes?
Yes. So the first thing that you've actually just said is the maritime industry is unlike any industry I've ever worked in. So I have worked in many industries and I've never seen anything like the maritime industry. It's very pleasurably chaotic industry in that it's running before it can walk. And as a marketer, that's actually quite an interesting place to be in when it comes to promoting products and services within the maritime industry. So the business focuses on allowing our target audiences to make data-driven decision when it comes to, on one side, risk and compliance, and on the other side, voyage optimization and route optimization of the shipping industry. So part of what we are doing now and part of our challenge at the moment is to really showcase the end-to-end capabilities of our products within the niche that we have. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the niche that we have is quite broad. So we can facilitate the full supply chain from a financial institution that is providing trade finance to a ship owner, all the way to said ship owner actually trying to charter their voyage for their ships. So that's a challenge for us, because the messaging that we put together, the tone that we use, and the target audiences that we're speaking to, they're not just location specific. They also need to hear certain things that perhaps other parts of our audience don't have to hear, or don't need to hear, or isn't really relevant to them. So that's where the challenge comes in. We need to try to really drill down into what each step of that supply chain needs from us, so that we can make sure that we are able to convey how we can support them specifically.
You're speaking to something that I think a lot of companies, especially those that are not in B2B SaaS, for example, probably have some challenges with, which is audience understanding and understanding their behavior, understanding what's going to resonate with them. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, for maybe a more niche industry like this, how you go about getting that audience insight?
Yeah, so the audience insight is a tricky thing at the best of times. Okay, so even in the most open space, understanding your audience is quite tricky, and often you will have to test and learn when it comes to audience identification and message management. And the way our team is trying to evolve at the moment is to segment the audiences by what's in it for them. So it's about, in my opinion, putting ourselves in their position. Each stage of the supply chain has a specific requirement. So if you are someone within the trade finance space, what you really want to understand is what is going on in terms of risk and compliance. So, for example, with the sanctions that are being put onto Russia by various countries, the European Union and so forth, supply chain needs to know, and trade finance providers need to know, what are the risks of financing a ship, for example, financing a voyage or financing a ship owner. And part of that is what we do. So we are able to showcase the risks involved with, for example, financing a specific ship owner. Are they sanctioned by the European Union? Are they involved in, or have they been involved in illicit activity? Our business can facilitate that information. So that on one side is something that we can look at in terms of our target audience. On the other side, you have the ship owners themselves, that they want to know, how can I get my ship from A to B? And so we have to look at our audience in a different way when it comes to that. So identifying the audience is one challenge. Understanding the audience is a completely different challenge. And so there's a lot of research that goes into that. There's a lot of really trying to drill down into their wants, needs, and aspirations, so that we can make sure that our messaging is tailored to what they need, as opposed to what we think they want to hear.
This is such a fascinating conversation, because while it's a really unique industry that you're talking about that may not be as relatable to the broader audience, it is a very common challenge. Understanding your customer, getting the right message into the right in front of the right customer, especially when you have maybe a very wide offering for your product, or a lot of different products that you could offer. So could you talk to me about when you came in to address this challenge? It sounds like first step is identifying these different audiences. Second step is trying to research and understand them better. Now, where are you in your journey of getting that message created for each of those audiences and getting it in front of them? How are you doing that?
You're right in saying we've identified the audiences that we are looking to target, because the audiences are very broad, but equally they all have a place in our product proposition. So the maritime industry is incredibly vast, but when you look at it as a linear, you see that it goes all the way from the financing all the way to the actual delivery of a product to a port. Okay. And for me, the benefit of what we're trying to do, the benefit of how we're structuring our messaging and our holistic marketing activity is trying to get the synergy between what we can do and what we can provide and what we pride ourselves on being able to deliver to our audience, but also stating it in a way that gives them the ability to fully understand how their company stands to benefit from this. So one thing that I'm very passionate about is not being transactional in our marketing activity. We don't need to tell people what our features are. That's on our website. If they want to know what we do, we could just send them a link to our website. What our role as marketers, I believe, is to educate our target audience in what they stand to benefit from letting us help them. And if we can get that balance, I think that stands us in good stead as a business. But at the same time, that creates a sense of collaboration and community, which I feel is overlooked often in marketing. And some of the biggest brands have been successful because they have created a sense of community, a sense of belonging. And within the maritime industry, that's something that I believe is untapped. So when it comes to creating messaging, the messaging can't be transactional. It can't be about, this is what we do, use us. This is about, this is what we can do for you, let us help you. And if you as a business are genuine in your approach, which I truly believe that we are, and I am privileged to lead that in terms of communicating that externally, that makes a difference, because businesses will start to see that actually you are there to support their growth, as opposed to you are there to sell them something and then move on to the next business.
Let's unpack that a little bit more, because I think that the philosophy of that is super sound. But I think when it comes to metrics and KPIs and goals, we're all kind of trained on volume, right? Number of MQLs, number of downloads. And so that kind of lends itself to, well, if we're doing an email, that's a nurture campaign, there must always be a hard CTA of some kind so that we can track that and we can prove that out. How do you balance having this philosophy with the expectations of marketing today with all these different goals and KPIs that we have to be goaled against?
That is a beautiful question, and brace yourself, strap yourself in.
Okay.
Yes. Hey, I believe in KPIs. I do. I believe in KPIs. KPIs are essentially how you can create benchmarks for growth. Okay. And I believe in KPIs wholeheartedly. What I do also believe in, however, is the creative freedom to grow by making mistakes. And KPIs sometimes detract from that. KPIs can be something that you look at and you feel that you might have failed, even though you have achieved something by learning something that didn't work. And that's where I feel the philosophy is in many marketing functions can be a little bit tainted by KPIs. So for me, KPIs are important, and KPIs, essentially, when you really look at KPIs, they give the marketing team the ability to benchmark and grow. They give senior management and the board members the ability to make a decision on whether your spend is justified or not. But really, they are a number. And although businesses work on numbers and they work on ROI, they work on annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, net new logo, that's not what marketing is all about. Part of that is, but that part is demand generation. On the flip side, you have everything else. And what I am trying to build and what I love building and what we spoke about earlier, the mentoring side, what I try to instill in the people I speak to is marketing isn't just numbers. And if you work for a business that purely focuses on numbers, don't be afraid to challenge, because marketing is also educating. You look at, again, I mentioned brands, you look at some of the biggest brands, they tell stories. They engage you and they make you feel part of their story. And if you're part of their story with another million people, that creates community. And so that's where KPIs are important, but they come as part of the narrative of the story that you tell. So for me, the education piece is incredibly important. I could give you a list of the things that my business does. And you would say, oh, but if I tell you how that will change your life and your business's life, I promise you'll feel differently if you decide to use us. And it's the difference between having a customer and having an advocate. So that's where KPIs are incredibly important, but I feel very passionate about the fact that there is a whole other side of marketing that can't be quantified or qualified in the same way.
Yeah, big fan of doing things that are unscalable before you're ready to scale. And it sounds like you've been able to successfully communicate and tell a story internally about the value of some of these channels, like community, that maybe are not so traditional and accepted in this industry, in this space. How have you created content that is meaningful and relevant, to your point, that tells a story that makes your customers and future customers feel belonged in a way that resonates externally, but also has got a lot of buy-in internally?
So this is the beauty of the maritime industry. So much happens all the time. Okay. So you may recall the Suez Canal incident a few years back with the Ever Given that was stranded for weeks. You may remember the Baltimore Bridge incident that happened not
Recently.
long ago.
Yeah.
There is so much that happens on a daily basis, not to mention the Red Sea situation at the moment. There's a lot of stuff that as a business and as a marketing team and as marketers in the maritime industry, you can be very reactive to. And if you work within a business that can support in understanding and confronting situations like this, you're at a slight advantage. So, for example, the situations that are happening at the moment, the Red Sea situation at the moment, and the Suez Canal situation at the moment, we are able to support businesses on two fronts. One, when it comes to, for example, piracy. So piracy is on the up because of the fact that what's going on is creating turmoil, there's confusion, and we are able to track vessels. And so we are able to track what is going on in terms of illicit activity. On the flip side, we're also able to help ship owners reroute. So, for example, instead of going through the Suez Canal, go past the Cape of Good Hope and go the long way round, but do it in a way that is still efficient and that still meets standards and everything else. So that's the beauty of what we do. We're able to be reactive to industry situations and to geopolitical situations. And at the same time, we're able to be proactive and utilize those situations to let people know we're here to help. We're here to support. We're here to facilitate your growth in spite of what's going on around you. And it's quite a cool place to be in when it comes to the way that we market. Messaging side is a challenge because you don't want to be insensitive to what's happening. You don't want to jump on the bandwagon. And a good example is, and I'm very proud of how we handled the Baltimore Bridge. We had two options. One was to jump on it immediately and say, hey, everyone, we have the data. This is what happened. Use us. The other approach was to let things play out, to be mindful of what was going on and how things were shaping up, and then to provide insights on what happened, how it all unfolded, and how we can assist with future instances of that nature. We chose the latter, and I believe that was the right way to go about it. So Yeah, messaging is difficult because you also don't want to be insensitive. But if you get it right, I feel that there's a lot of power in working within the maritime industry because of the way it evolves very quickly.
I agree. There's quite a lot of power in that, and I think even people outside of the industry can really use this message of pulling on timely, relevant things happening in the industry in order to hook and bring traffic and bring community and provide value to their audience. How have you created a culture within your organization of being able to quickly capitalize, or maybe that's not the right word, understand what's going on in the overall market, decide, like you just said, it's really could potentially be positive or negative how you decide to react to these things, but then produce the content and get it out in front of your audience in such a timely manner?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because it wasn't an easy process. We are very lucky, and I personally feel very lucky that in the organization we have incredible subject matter experts. We have people who have been captains of ships, who are qualified seafarers. Like, we have people in our business who really know what they're talking about. And when things happen, I'm in a very privileged position to say, okay, hey, what should we be doing at this point? Is this something you want to be talking about? Is this something you would be happy putting your name to? Is this something that if we go out to trade media or national media, are we in a position to put our faces to what's going on? And sometimes the answer is no, because sometimes things are happening geopolitically that actually you don't want to be at the front of the queue. That's not where you want to be. Sometimes there are things you need to let play out and then be there to support the industry thereafter. So we have people internally who support on this, and that is a very good thing to have in a business. Many businesses in the maritime industry have that, don't get me wrong. But I have to say, sometimes my jaw hits the floor when I hear some of our people internally talk about what they do, talk about how they do it, talk about what they know. It never stops surprising me, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that I love the maritime industry.
It sounds like a well-oiled machine. It's one where you have the subject matter experts. So your company is purposely hiring these subject matter experts that they're relying and outsourcing essentially the point of view for your company on. Then you have an engine that's filtering and pushing in relevant, timely, new to you all. And then it sounds like there's almost like a racy framework that you might have implemented or maybe will implement somehow of, okay, it fits this criteria. These are the potential risks. Yes, we should go after it, or no, we shouldn't, or wait on this timeline. I would be curious if you ever have thought about putting some process around that, or if you feel very confident with the way things are currently.
So in a way, we do have a process around that. So as a marketing team, historically, we have had a racy kind of matrix that we abide by. And very quickly, we realized that our skill set, our knowledge, the business's knowledge and the business's skill set surpassed that racy metrics. And actually, it almost segmented us in a way that meant there was a lack of communication. So really, where we arrived to was a point where we became more collaborative by being more open in our communication when in the industry, for example. So case in point, the Baltimore incident, I remember very vividly, it was over a weekend and we were all messaging on Slack, we were all messaging on email, and we were coming up with things that we should do, how we should do it, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And that is something that if we had stuck to the structure that historically we might have had, we probably wouldn't have had that collaboration. It would have sat with specific people that perhaps wouldn't have been the best people to kind of engage with at that moment in time. So to answer your question, I feel quite confident in the way that we're handling things now. I feel that we're bringing our expertise to the market in a way that is genuine because of the experience that the business has and the people within the business have. And if we focus too much on structure, we might miss out on some of that expertise.
Sure, that's fair. And certainly a great position to be in to have that kind of collaboration. When you're talking to me about this kind of framework for reacting and responding, building that community, building that brand authority and trust, you're kind of rigging into some of my background where I've worked with some companies that really position themselves as a media company. So obviously they're selling some kind of solution or software, but they were trying to position themselves as a media company to build that community, to build that brand authority. What are the channels and tactics that you have explored successfully, or maybe even some future channels and tactics that you want to explore to kind of continue that media arm that you've been building?
So it's a very interesting question because the channels that we're trying to employ are a multitude of channels. So as a business, we being B2B means that you are not necessarily restricted, but that you primarily focus on certain channels that facilitate your growth in terms of B2B sales. And what we're trying to do at the moment is build a demand generation engine. So I very recently created I'm a very visual person, marketing funnel. And that marketing funnel had a series of arrows that pointed to all of the various channels that supports each stage of the funnel. And each stage of the funnel has a series of channels that support the growth of that particular stage. And what became very apparent in what I created was how each individual channel cannot effectively work in isolation. Each individual channel has to be supported by another channel or a series of other channels to be efficient enough to drive funnel growth. Okay. So in terms of how we're trying to grow the business, you mentioned the media side, and you mentioned kind of, for me, media, and apologies if I misconstrued what you said, but the way I see the media side is really growing the brand awareness, the awareness of the business, the product, and the more top of the funnel piece. And really that is one cog in what we're trying to build. So we have campaigns that run around LinkedIn. We have campaigns that run around PR and our SEO and everything else that really drive the top of the funnel. And what's interesting to see is how that all interlinks with the rest of our marketing funnel and how it really builds our pipeline. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really how we've tried to structure it in a way that doesn't just focus on one specific side. Although media is important, and I guess what I would class as shouting about our business, I see kind of the PR side and the media side as shouting about our business, how that all then interlink to the bottom of the funnel, where I would say is whispering about our business. So you shouted about it and people have come close enough for you to lean in and say, and this is what you can stand to gain. That's how I see it.
I was actually going to say that you have it the opposite. It's you're purposely educating and entertaining your audience, right? So it's less about that hard ask of features, solutions. It's more so we are the experts in this space. We are going to provide you timely and relevant and sometimes very entertaining information. So when I say media, I'm thinking more of a newspaper or HBO as an example, right? People go there because there's this brand affinity based on the content and entertainment that they're putting out there. And there are a lot of B2B companies that are trying to do more of that. So they'll create podcasts or video series or flagship events that are not designed with that hard ACV or ARR at the end of it, but more designed to create that affinity. And so I can imagine that you're probably seen by your audience as, I'm going to follow them because I know I'm going to get timely, relevant information that matters to me. Oh, and sure, I can go to them for a service, but mostly you're kind of leading with shouting about the industry and these professionals and less about the solution. So I would be
100%.
curious. Yeah. And I think that's fantastic and probably really revolutionary in your space, I would imagine. What are some of those non-traditional tactics and channels that you have deployed at the bottom to really kind of close the account? Because I think you've done a fabulous job of outlining how to cover at all different stages. But what are some maybe unique channels or tactics or things that have even surprised you that worked really well at the bottom of the funnel for this audience?
So that is a very topical question. We recently attended one of the biggest shipping conferences in the world in Greece called Posidonia. And we decided as a business that we would try something different, try something we'd never tried before. And as a marketing team, we were in this beautiful position to have creative licensing and dispensation to just try, see what happens. No idea was a stupid idea when we were deciding what we would do. And that's a very cool place to be as a marketer, as I'm sure you can understand. And what I really loved about that opportunity was that we were really thinking outside the box. There can be a degree of complacency when, for example, you have a booth at a conference. Complacency can creep in. You can have the same merchandise. You can have the same pull-up banners. You'll be having the same conversation. You'll be shaking the same hands. And eventually you will be one of many booths that your target audience has visited. Instead, what we were able to do was really just go outside the box completely. And it was borderline guerrilla marketing, what we were doing. We got polo shirts made with a big QR code and our products on the back. And people were coming up and scanning our back and like going onto our new website and stuff. We had scratch cards. So we're in the process at the moment of refreshing our brand. So we had scratch cards where when you scratched, you went from our old logo to our new logo and you had a chance to win an Amazon voucher. Things that no one had seen at that conference before. And they're not revolutionary, okay? We didn't reinvent the wheel, but they were things that for quite a, I wouldn't say serious conference in the best sense, is quite a fun, dynamic conference, but it is still relatively your archetypal suit and tie conference. We weren't in suit and ties. We were in polo shirts with a big ass QR code. So that was cool. That was different. That made us stand out. And that is what marketing is about. This kind of goes full circle to the KPIs thing that you were saying before. The KPIs for a QR code on the back of a polo shirt, I promise you, are non-existent. But trust me, if you speak to someone at our next conference who was at that conference and you tell them where you work, they're going to say, you had a QR code on your back. And that is also what marketing is about. So yeah, that's, for me, marketing is all about pushing the limits. If you push the limits, and again, case study upon case study of the most successful businesses is push the boat out. Pun intended, Maritime Industry.
That's good. That's good.
Push the boat out. That is how I see it. If you can do that, if you can do something that no one else, quite frankly, has thought about, has felt comfortable doing, has felt doing, you're going to stand out. Sometimes in good, sometimes in bad, but you will stand out and then you'll have an opportunity to learn and progress.
Dany, this has been such a fascinating and motivating conversation with you today. So we really appreciate you coming on. Before we close it out, we always wrap right back around to that magic wand question. And I think you've already kind of alluded to it several times within this conversation. Between what you had originally answered, which was if you had that magic wand, you would go back in time to younger Dany, newer, greener Dany, and tell him to be more confident in taking chances, to not be worried about what he doesn't know, just ask the questions. And it sounds like you've just given a masterclass in not being scared as a marketer either, in really going for it, even if you're in a stuffier or older industry or in a place where nobody's done it before. So I want to put that question back on you after all of this great conversation we just had. If you kind of spoke to going back in time and telling your younger self to not worry about what you don't know, just ask the question, just take the chances. And you had a really great statement just then about pushing the limit. What do you think you could do today? We don't have a time machine, but today to encourage yourself or the people around you, your audience personally, to go for that?
That is a very beautiful question. That is a very thought-provoking question, because I don't feel that I spend enough time thinking about that. I don't feel that I spend enough time thinking about where I am now and what my next move could be, not for me, but for my team, for my business, for my industry. And a lot of it is very reactive in nature. And you tend to become quite complacent when you get to a point where you're at senior level, you're in a business that is profitable and it's growing, and there will always be a layer of complacency when you're in that situation. But actually, the one thing that I believe that I can, when I really think about it and when I really think about what motivates me, I want to change the world. The honest answer is I want to change the world, one marketing campaign at a time. If I believe, and the thing that I love about what I do, and I will rephrase the question for you because I want it to suit what I'm about to say. But what I love about what I do and what really drives me and what genuinely gets me out of bed every day is knowing that I can help a person, a business, an industry to make an educated decision that will make their lives better. That for me is what marketing is about. Marketing for me is about people helping other people to know what's going on, understand what's going on, understand what's there to help them, and to make an educated decision. And if I can do that, if I can rest assured that the education piece that I mentioned earlier, the educating the audience that we're trying to target and the industry that we work within into the benefit, the genuine benefit of adopting us to support them, then I've done my job and I'm happy. I'm happy because I know that I haven't missold. I have genuinely projected what we can do to support them and to make their business more profitable, to help their business grow, to help the people within that business grow and be happy. That to me is what marketing's about. Marketing is often misconstrued. I remember having a conversation, and I'll leave you with this. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine years ago. This was probably halfway through my career, where they likened my role to a secondhand car salesman, to essentially selling something because I want my business to make money. And the truth is, the business wants to make money. And that is what business is. Business is about making money. The definition of a business partly is making money, okay? Unless you're a nonprofit. Marketing for me is about creating awareness, creating community, creating a sense of support for people's needs, wants, and aspirations. That to me is what marketing is. And that's why I love what I do. So to go back to your question, the magic wand right now, I feel like I'm holding it. And I feel very privileged to be holding it, because if I can positively influence people, and by influence, I don't mean being on TikTok dancing, I mean actually influence people with the messaging that I can convey, then I've got my magic wand. And for as long as I can use it, I will continue to use it.
That's certainly what we hope all of our guests feel like when they come on the show. So thank you for encapsulating that so perfectly, Dany. And thank you for all the altruistic KPIs that marketers can go ahead and add to their quarterly goal. I love it. We love it so much, Dany. Thank you so much. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Best way would be either through LinkedIn or email. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. But thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for having me and for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you, Dany. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Direct with Corrina and Taylor.
If you enjoyed what you heard in today's episode, please give us a follow, maybe even a 5-star review, wherever you listen to your podcast.
And if you know someone that you'd like to spotlight, if you want to share your own story, visit us at motionagency.io/direct. We'd love to hear from you.